We're back with Investing Insights with Barry Burnett. We're absolutely delighted you're listening tonight because this show is designed for entrepreneurial investors just like yourself. This is information that you can actually use to make your investments stronger, safer, smarter. And in that, we're talking about mediation with Bob Andersen, a man I have known and cherished for 4 decades. My fraternity brother from UCLA, who is an attorney practicing in Riverside for 34 years, who runs a mediation service. And mediation is really important. He's passionate about it because there are some things that can run away when you've got conflicts. Bob, where are we on that?
Okay, let me give you an example of one where mediation could have been vastly superior. There was this one case where the broker for the shipper got a shipper to ship a piece of property for a buyer. And it was about a
personal property, not real estate.
Personal property, that's right. It was about a $5,000 shipping cost.
Okay.
And the product was damaged in the shipping.
Never happens.
So the buyer sued the shipper's broker. And the question was, who was liable? $5,000 at issue.
Okay.
Okay, they couldn't decide. They were both 80 to 90% sure that they were going to win. So they actually went to court, and the court decided that, okay, the buyer was going to win this one. But then he also got attorney's fees of about $20,000.
Okay,
now, why in the world do you want to fight over $5,000 and risk 20?
So not just risk, but spent.
Yeah.
He actually wrote checks for $20,000 with the hope that he would win and get his $20,000 back, right?
Right.
And then, and as you said earlier in the earlier segment, you might just get a judgment, not necessarily cash.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you have to pursue the judgment.
Right.
Which is a whole different legal matter.
So even if they had split it, even if they thought they were 80% likely to win, the fact that the other side has a legitimate perspective tells you that the judge may be thinking that the other side may be right. If you split it, they both would have come out far better.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we know that mediation is the likely least cost. And you were talking about how mediation can really bring some very creative solutions to situations that other people have just maybe linear thinking, and they're just stuck in their linear thinking. So you bring a mediator to the table. But when we were at break, you talked about something that was vitally important. Bring that back up.
Okay, there's 2 points of confidentiality in a mediation. Let's talk about the main point of confidentiality, and that is the parties themselves. The legislature has decided that it is important for parties to try to settle cases without going to court. So statements made in a mediation for the purposes of settlement are not admissible in court.
Okay, I want you to say that again because that's big, and that's not what most people understand. So say that again.
When you're discussing settlement, you have the freedom to discuss settlement without it becoming a point of evidence at the trial.
So it can't be used against you. It's not under oath, and it's not in part of a deposition. So the other side's attorney can't squeeze it in if it goes to trial.
Right. It does not come into trial as evidence at trial, which means you can talk about the case in a way to try and figure out how are we going to settle this thing and not worry about what the judge is going to say, maybe twist what you've said at a mediation in order to be used against you.
That's insightful. And that makes a huge difference to our investors, the listeners on this show, because if they get into a twist and they're kind of stuck, they can look at mediation as a really viable solution because, 1, it's much faster, and 2, it doesn't have an absolute outcome. So they still, if it doesn't work and the other side's just completely knuckleheaded, you can still go for either an arbitration or a lawsuit and go to court, right?
Right. If you're just talking settlement in a negotiation, one-on-one negotiation without a mediator, you better make sure that you're both understanding that these are settlement discussions.
Okay.
But with a mediator there and with a formal mediation, it's clear that you can't use it as evidence.
Okay, so that makes a big difference with a mediator in the room, and it's a mediator. It should be somebody who is registered with the California State Bar, a practicing attorney or a retired judge or something.
You don't have to be an attorney, but let's see, what are you looking for? There are different kinds of disputes. What kind of mediator would you look for? If you're looking at a particular area where the law is really important, you probably do want a lawyer that is somewhat familiar with the general area of law.
Okay, so you don't go family law on a real estate transaction, and you don't necessarily have somebody who's, say, a trip and fall practicing attorney who's involved with the workers' comp or product liability if you're talking about a real estate transaction.
If the result is going to follow the law, that's right. However, perhaps remember the individual that says, my sister's told me what to do for 30 years. She's not telling me what to do today.
Oh,
you need a mediator who's good with the emotions. That one is going straight to the emotions. Who cares what the law is? You got to have somebody who can say, okay, calm down here, think. If you're going to be mad at your sister, you may wind up spending a whole lot more money. Maybe you ought to think about this just a little bit longer before you take that position.
I'm going to say that probably a very large number of our listeners have business with family members, not just their spouses. And I'm going to say that this segment about mediation and discussion about family members, probably one of the real hot buttons of this whole show. You're listening to Investing Insights with Barry Burnett. I'm your host, Barry Burnett. We are on Talk Radio 790 KABC with Bob Andersen, expert mediator, attorney, based in Riverside, reachable on barryburnett.net. Contact us at barryburnett.net. We will connect you with Bob Andersen so that you can have your questions answered and get your mediations settled, or at least get your thoughts organized. And Bob, when you're talking about emotions, that's pretty much the key of all times when people are twisted up, right?
People make decisions primarily based upon emotion, not based on logic. They think they make their decisions based on logic, but they don't really. And the higher the emotion, the harder it is to break through.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get back to that family for a second. Let's go into business. Hey, brother, we've gotten along for a while. Let's go into business. No written settlement, no written agreement as to who does what.
Yeah.
They just go into business together. They have a general partnership without knowing what that means. And that can be a real problem. That stress comes back when all of a sudden brothers disagree with brothers over some financial
and
issue.
God forbid that one of the brothers ends up in a dissolution of marriage, and suddenly the spouse ends up owning the greater half of all things. And
all of a sudden you're a partner with a spouse.
or a former spouse.
Okay, yeah.
And wow, that can be interesting. And so mediation is a valuable tool, right?
Yeah, it's an essential tool for any investor to have in their toolbox. I remember one of my cases, it was a business dispute. Two people were litigating against each other. One person wanted money from the other.
Yeah.
But the real problem wasn't the two people in the room. It was a third person who wasn't even in the lawsuit that basically defrauded both of them.
The 800-pound gorilla, and how do we solve this between ourselves rather than addressing the real point?
Yes.
Well,
the two people in the room decided one employed the other one, and they both went out ecstatically happy.
Oh, well, there you go. As long as they were fine, then the 800-pound gorilla had been addressed.
Okay, well, that one worked out real well. Yeah, usually people leave in mediation saying, at least we're done.
Yeah.
But this one, they were ecstatic.
And that's a fabulous result. And not all things end up in fabulous results, so sometimes we need a point of contact. That's the reason for this show. That's the reason for Investing Insights with Barry Burnett, and the reason why we're on Talk Radio 790 KABC, so that our listeners, entrepreneurial investors, so that they can not be owned by their property, not be tormented by their circumstances, but be stronger, safer, smarter. And tonight we've had a spectacular guest on a tremendous topic, Bob Andersen, mediator, on how to create solutions, not just expand problems and spend money. I'm really proud you were on the show. It's been tremendous visiting with you. Go on barryburnett.net for an opportunity to continue this discussion and to get our white papers and information how to reach Bob Andersen. Thank you very much for listening every Saturday night, 8 to 9 p.m.